Britain wants to make things again. Politicians from across the political spectrum are talking about reindustrialisation, new factories, green industries, defence production, advanced manufacturing, economic resilience, all the buzzwords. The idea is appealing. After decades of stagnant productivity, regional inequality and growing dependence on overseas supply chains, rebuilding Britain's industrial base sounds like a common sense solution. But there's one problem. Britain didn't simply lose factories, it lost skills, supply chains, technical expertise, industrial ecosystems. Entire regional economies built around manufacturing disappeared over the course of half a century, and all we're left with is retail parks. So when politicians say Britain should become a manufacturing nation again, fundamental question follows: how exactly would that work? Today we're examining whether reindustrialisation is genuinely achievable, what the obstacles are, and what a realistic industrial strategy would look like. To understand the challenge, we need to understand the scale of Britain's transformation. Britain was the world's first industrial nation. Throughout the 19th century, British factories, shipyards, steelworks and engineering firms dominated global markets. Regions such as the Midlands, South Wales, Lancashire, Tyneside, Clydeside became industrial powerhouses. But from the 1970s onwards, deindustrialisation accelerated. Global competition intensified. Countries like Germany, Japan, South Korea and later China expanded their manufacturing capabilities. At the same time, technological change reduced labour requirements, while investment increasingly flowed into finance, property and services. Manufacturing employment fell dramatically, from roughly 7 million in the late 1960s to fewer than 3 million by the early 21st century. Mining virtually disappeared, shipbuilding contracted sharply, steel production declined substantially. Britain gradually evolved into a service-led economy. Some economists argue this transition was largely inevitable. Others argue Britain allowed strategic industrial capabilities to erode too far. Either way, today's debate isn't taking place in an industrial nation. It's taking place in a country that has already gone one of the most extensive episodes of deindustrialisation in the developed world. Supporters of reindustrialisation make powerful arguments. First, productivity. Britain has suffered weak productivity growth for more than a decade. Manufacturing sectors generate higher productivity than many service industries. Secondly, they argue economic resilience in the world after COVID-19. We've exposed the vulnerabilities in global supply chains. Governments have discovered how dependent they are on overseas production for critical goods. Thirdly, national security. Rising geopolitical tensions have renewed interest in domestic manufacturing, particularly defence, energy and strategic technologies. Fourthly, regional development. Many of Britain's former industrial regions continue to struggle economically. There's also an argument about economic balance. A healthy economy benefits from diversity. Over-reliance on a single sector, whether manufacturing, finance, property or technology, can increase vulnerability to any shocks that come. And clearly shocks are coming. The question isn't whether industry matters. The question is whether Britain still possesses the foundations necessary to rebuild it, or are we just using a buzzword? The biggest obstacle is skills. Modern manufacturing isn't simply about assembly lines and manual labour. Today's advanced industries require engineers, technicians, electricians, welders, machinists, software specialists, production experts. They can't all be fixed by AI. These skills take years to develop. And in fairness, there's been a push to train more people in that direction. For decades, public policy strongly encouraged university education, while vocational and technical routes received less attention and, let's face it, were seen as inferior. That's how they were treated. That decision produced benefits in some areas, but it also created a skills gap that industrial employers frequently struggle to fill. Compare Britain and Germany. Germany's dual education system integrates vocational training directly with industry, creating a steady pipeline of highly skilled workers. Britain's technical education landscape is much more fragmented. Reindustrialisation would require something politicians rarely discuss: patience. You can't create a generation of engineers in a single parliamentary term. The same applies to infrastructure. Manufacturing depends on transport networks, logistics systems, ports, energy infrastructure and planning certainty. Businesses making billion-pound investments need confidence that infrastructure commitments won't change every few years. Yet Britain has developed a reputation for policy instability. Major infrastructure projects are late, modified or cancelled. From an investor's perspective, uncertainty is expensive. And then there's the supply chains. It's where discussions become unrealistic. A factory doesn't operate in isolation. An automotive plant depends on hundreds of suppliers. Battery manufacturing depends on mining, chemical processing, specialised machinery, logistical networks. Industrial ecosystems evolve over decades. Britain's lost many of these supporting networks. We just moved it aboard, sold it off, or closed it. Building a factory is difficult. It's not just one building. Building an ecosystem is a lot harder. So one issue stands above all of these issues: energy costs. Industrial competitiveness depends heavily on affordable and reliable energy. Historically, Britain benefited from abundant domestic energy resources. Today, many British manufacturers face higher energy costs than competitors in North America, Asia or much of Europe. How can they compete? Industries such as steel, chemicals, advanced materials are highly energy intensive. Even modest cost differences can cost millions. Members' capital investment. Industrial projects require decades to generate returns. Britain's economic system has frequently rewarded shorter-term financial activity. Property investment appears more attractive. You make more money quicker turning a factory into a block of flats than building a new business in there. Financial markets aren't irrational, they respond to incentives. Policymakers want more industrial investment. They have to create conditions where long-term productive investment becomes attractive. Markets allocate resources efficiently. Challenge is supporting industrial growth without creating wasteful government intervention. Governments have been bad at both of those. History contains examples of successful industrial policy, but also many examples of governments backing the wrong industry. Or look at DeLorean. The right industry, apparently in a very suitably political place, didn't work at all. So what would success actually look like? Probably not a return to the Britain of the 1950s. That vision is unrealistic. That world is dead. Modern manufacturing's highly automated. Factories produce more output with fewer workers. Even successful reindustrialisation would not recreate mass industrial employment. Instead, Britain should focus on sectors where genuine competitive advantages exist. Well, defence manufacturing is one obvious candidate, if governments can commit to spending in a timely fashion. Growing geopolitical instability has increased demand for domestic production. Advanced aerospace is another. Britain already has a world-class expertise. Green technologies, well, there are opportunities, but battery manufacturing, grid infrastructure, how much of that actually is going to happen in Britain? How much is going to go into Chinese pockets? Nuclear technologies, But we have to get out of the way a little bit if we really want it to work. Advanced materials, renewable energy supply chains, all of these are possible industries, but we have to have the right strategy to support and aid and keep out of the way. But success requires more than subsidies. A serious strategy would firstly provide a major expansion of technical education and apprenticeships. Secondly, planning reform that reduces delays. Thirdly, infrastructure investments sustained across electoral cycles. Fourthly, policies that improve industrial energy competitiveness. And fifthly, long-term support for research and development. Most importantly, policymakers would need to think in decades rather than election cycles, and who genuinely believes that's going to happen? The industrial ecosystem can't be rebuilt overnight. The appeal of reindustrialisation is understandable, promises stronger productivity, greater resilience, ticks all the boxes, right? But Britain has spent more than 40 years reducing industrial capacity, and during that time it lost factories, skills, supply chains, institutional knowledge, and rebuilding those will be far harder than it was taking them apart. The future is unlikely to resemble Britain's industrial past. The factories of tomorrow will be automated, specialised and technology driven. The goal isn't to recreate the 20th century, it's to build competitive industries for our children. The real question isn't whether Britain can bring back industry, it can't. Really, it's whether Britain can identify strategically important sectors and patiently rebuild the foundations. Reindustrialisation is possible, but unlikely. And success will be measured in generations, not years. So what industry should Britain prioritise first? You tell me.